My brother spent his college fund on parties and trips, and now that I'm rich and his money is gone, he demands that I continue to pay for his lifestyle. My father always taught my brother and me techniques to save money, like saving up, how important self-control was when spending, and so on. I always found these lessons boring, but I recognized how important they were. My brother, on the other hand, openly said he didn't care about any of that and that money was for spending, that we only live once and so on. My father was very disappointed with this since he saw my grandparents live a very poor old age because they spent all their money on frivolous things and he always tried to convince my brother to be a little more conscious about this issue. But it was all in vain. Eventually, my father just gave up trying to convince him and assumed that when he grew up, he would see how important what my father was saying was. When I turned 18, my father gave me the money he had saved for me to go to college. He had already said before that he would do this with all his children, and that if they didn't want to spend it specifically on college, that was fine by him. But if we wasted it on useless things, we could be sure we would never get a penny from him again. Knowing this, I really applied the money to college. But since I had received an 80% scholarship, I managed to save a good part of that money with which, many years later, I opened a company. After a few years, my brother also turned 18 and received the same amount of money with the same warning. But unlike me, he just disappeared. He made it clear that he would spend it all on trips. And my father didn't complain for a second, just said he could do whatever he wanted. But he should remember that when he came back, my brother would have to fend for himself because my father wouldn't help him with anything. I think my brother thought this money would last forever because he just left saying he didn't care. Well, this all happened a few years ago and nowadays my company is already medium-sized. I'm not a millionaire, but I definitely make enough money to live a peaceful life. My brother used to call from time to time, mainly to tease me, saying that I was silly for working when I could simply enjoy life with the money our father had given us. I didn't care about that because I was already seeing the fruits of my labor, and I knew that although I was having to work hard now, soon I could live peacefully in peace. Well, this year, finally, my brother's money ran out completely. For some reason, all this time he thought our father was bluffing, and that he would simply accept him back home after he had wasted all his money. Of course my father didn't accept it, and he simply saw that he had nowhere to go. I let him stay at my house for a few weeks, as he said it would be temporary. But that's until I realized that for some reason, money and some objects were disappearing. I asked him if he knew anything about it, and he openly said yes, and that it was him who was taking the objects and selling them to buy new games for himself. I asked if he was serious, and he said of course he was, and that I shouldn't care, since I was rich anyway. Of course I kicked him out of the house at that moment and told my parents what had happened, and I thought it would end there, and he would simply be forced to find his own way in life. But no. Every single day he shows up at my door screaming and saying I'm unfair for doing this, that the least I could do was to support him, and that I was somehow humiliating him just because he went to have fun instead of working. I couldn't bear it anymore and called the police on him, which got him arrested. He has already been released, but now his behavior has gotten worse and he sends me messages all day, comes to my door, shouts at my neighbors, etc. I decided I won't tolerate this anymore, and if he shows up today, he'll be arrested for good, and I'll make sure he stays there. I don't care if he wanted to spend the money that could have changed his life on frivolous things, but if he thinks he's going to force me to support his lifestyle, he's very wrong. You can now check if there's a part 2 by pressing share and more.